But if you have the right mindset, it's very easy for you to switch up plans and, make different moves. And that allowed me to kind of learn more about the business world, the investing world, and take that same grit, the same knowledge, and, the same mindset to this space. I was in Chicago, young kid selling real estate apartments, and that was really cool for me to be able to do that in downtown Chicago, where I grew up, just go around and help people find their new home. It was an opportunity given to me that I had to take advantage of, right? So one of those things where, you have that downturn where I mentioned getting hurt, but then you have a really good kind of big motivating factor for you that makes you want to keep pushing forward. And that was that for me. Like, okay, I have a chance here to do something, right? To be a part of something here.
Hey there. Welcome to another empowering episode of GWP, where we bring you inspiring stories and invaluable insights to fuel your personal and financial growth. Today, we have a truly exceptional guest with us, Darius Johnson, a trailblazer in the world of finance and mentorship. Darius is not just a financial expert. He is the visionary behind the first student-managed six-figure fund at Santa Clara University. Founder of Meritcy, an organization dedicated to mentoring first-generation students for successful careers in finance, consulting, and investment banking. Darius is passionate about breaking down barriers and empowering the next generation of leaders like you and me. In our candid conversation with Darius on GWP, we delve into a spectrum of topics, from the importance of mindset and self-talk to sustaining relationships, cultivating financial habits, mastering the art of networking, and effectively managing and overcoming rejections. Join us as we unravel the journey of a true influencer. Are you ready? Let's dive in.
All right, GWP podcast listeners, welcome to a new episode. I'm super excited for this episode, man. We're all the way in New York, recording today.
In New York, man, yeah.
Man, Darius Johnson, the man, the myth, the legend, young and doing great things. How you doing today?
I'm doing great, man. I'm doing great. Look, thank you so much for coming out. Definitely checked out some of your episodes. Love the content. So I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much. Well, I appreciate you checking out some of the content we have out there. I think my listeners are so fortunate to be listening to you today. Your story is amazing. It speaks for itself. You've done a lot of good work. And one of the things that intrigues me is your mindset, right? So jumping right in, talk to me about your mindset in how you approach getting things done. Because you strike me as a person that gets things done. Yeah. It looks like you think about it and then you go out there and execute. Talk to us about your mindset.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you hit the nail around the head. I think mindset has a lot to do with it. And I know you've probably experienced this too, right? Having the right mindset is really half the battle, honestly. I think for me, I was very fortunate and blessed to have a strong upbringing, a strong foundation. I think for me, that's where this idea of mindset, drive, determination, working hard came from. So growing up, immigrant household, I'm sure you probably heard things like, make sure you go to college, get a degree, go to school, stuff like that, right? But then it was that question of like, how do you go about doing that, right? What's the process for doing that? And I think for me, it really came down to, you have to understand that having a plan is really important. If you don't have a plan, then you're planning to fail. And I think for me, learning that at a very young age was very fortunate for me. And I was able to kind of apply that throughout my life. And the first plan I had was a plan to actually play football. So that was my plan in high school, until I now have a titanium rod in my right femur because I had a really big injury that happened playing football. And that was my first plan: play football, do well, go to college, get college paid for, do well in college. And as you know, sometimes plans don't work out, and sometimes you have to reshift and have a new plan. But if you have the right mindset, it's very easy for you to switch up plans and make different moves. And that allowed me to kind of learn more about the business world, the investing world, and take that same grit, the same knowledge, and the same mindset to this space, and say, okay, can I apply that same mindset? Can I make myself a plan? Can I explore this space? Can I dive deep into it? And then that led to a lot of different things, from college obviously to we'll talk about funds and businesses, and started on this whole journey of wealth. But it really started off with sometimes a plan doesn't work, but the right mindset, you can shift your plan and start new things. And I was fortunate to have a really strong foundation, and that's helped me get to where I am today.
Amazing. So speaking of like a plan, and if it doesn't work, shifting your mindset, I think sometimes we make plans and there's an emotional connection to that plan. For you, you wanted to play football, and I'm sure there was so much emotion attached to wanting to play football, right? You want to be great. You want to be, you probably wanted to make it to the NFL, and
Of course, NFL on the cards, all of it, yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
So for some of us young adults that listen to this podcast, we probably have these plans of doing some of these great things. How do you go about shifting, especially when something happens like that? Because I think it takes mental, physical, spiritual in order to be able to realign yourself and not be defeated and not go into a spiral of, I'm a failure, right? Like, what's that self-talk that goes on once you hit that spot?
There's a lot of self-talk for me. I mean, take it back to the moments I remember where the leg just broke, on the couch, can't move, right? Being in that moment, it's like you can go one of two ways. I mean, you can go the way of like, it's over, fall into a state of depression, right? And all those things can happen to you. But like you mentioned, like, for me, again, I harp on this a lot, but it's having a really good foundation. So when it comes to family being a really core value to me and being something that has really helped me throughout my life, having people around you who wouldn't let that happen to you, right? Who wouldn't let you fall down that path. So I think this is why, like, I've always heard this growing up, but, show me your friends or show you your future, right? But even more so than that, like your family, your foundation is part of that too, who you surround yourself with. So I was fortunate to have that support system to where that downturn did happen for me, but people around me saw that as a silver lining. Okay, he can reshift focus, right? He can focus on school, focus on business world. And then when that happened to me, right, it was, okay, this actually should be a benefit for me. I have a chance to realign. I'm 16 years old. There's so much ahead. I have a chance to realign and shift focus. And I actually met one of my mentors when I started interning at a startup when I was in high school for 2 summers, this real estate tech startup, and that opened my eyes to the space. I was in Chicago, young kid, selling real estate apartments, and that was really cool for me to be able to do that in downtown Chicago, where I grew up, just go around and help people find their new home. And that really exposed me to a lot of things about sales, customer service, the business world, seeing a startup from, the ins and outs before even going to college. And that was the platform that, has launched a lot of things that I'm trying to do now today. So I think, really it is like being that moment, but having a support system around you that won't let you do that. And then you telling yourself, like, what could happen if I take that same mentality I had towards that sport, but put it towards something different? Like, what could I do in this space? Like, how much could I accomplish? And it was hard. In the moment, it was hard. But now I look back on it like, okay, it was a great launch point that now I'm kind of in the moment, and I hopefully continue to keep going from here.
Yeah. Well, I love that you talk about your support system, because as I was reading your story, that's something that you talk about, right? You have a strong support system. Yeah. And you also managed to do that shift, but not only just a shift, but you shifted and you did it at a very high level. And when I say that, I mean, you graduated magna cum laude, which is amazing, right? Which means even though you experienced failure, you didn't let that define your future, right? You still remain focused, right? Tell us about your journey. You went to Santa Clara University, and while you were there, I think one of the articles I was reading was your name is all over the campus, right? Your name is all over the campus for great things that you did, such as starting the first student-run fund, which amazing, right? 6-figure fund being run by students. You started that, right? And then you graduated at a very high level also. Not only did you do that, but you also brought other people along with you, such as like mentoring them, getting them ready for interviews, giving them the right tools and resources to be successful. Talk to us about that journey. Yeah,
absolutely. And you hit on one point, which is like the failure piece. And one thing I still am trying to learn today is how do you be comfortable with failing, and how do you be comfortable with failing fast and learning from it? And it's something I try, and like, today, even, whether it's in a job or trying to run a company or starting a fund, you're going to hit so many roadblocks and obstacles. And for me, it's just being comfortable with failing. And, you hear all the time, like, get good grades, do well in school. Sometimes failing is seen as like a very big negative thing, but just getting out of that mindset and being willing to fail has really helped me. So to that point, to like the journey, right? So you mentioned going to Santa Clara, starting the fund, having that, graduating with high honors, et cetera. So all those different things, I think it is a support system. So first, I was fortunate enough to go to Santa Clara on a full merit ride. So that was great, right? So having that jumpstart, I felt like it was an opportunity given to me that I had to take advantage of, right? So one of those things where, you have that downturn where I mentioned getting hurt, but then you have a really good kind of big motivating factor for you that makes you want to keep pushing forward. And that was that for me. Like, okay, I have a chance here to do something, right? To be a part of something here. And then when I got to Santa Clara, I started to learn a lot about the finance world. And I'm sure we're going to touch on this later on. But when I started to learn about it, I was like, wow, this world is really exciting to me. I knew about real estate a bit, but I didn't really know about the financial world from the investing point of view. So that to me just opened my eyes, like there's so much opportunity here. And then I got involved in a couple external organizations outside of my university. So I started to meet students from other schools and other places and other walks of life. And when you do that, when you see different perspectives, talk to different students, it just helps you become a much more well-rounded person. And I think one of the big things that's helped me in my life, and hopefully will continue to, is the power of networking, meeting people, talking to people, having those connections, because I mean, those things will take you very, very far. And then that took me to the fund. I mean, the fund that we started, the Santa Clara Investment Fund, which manages 6 figures from the endowment. And really the start of that was through networking, was talking to students who were at the school, who were interested in investment banking, in consulting careers, but we didn't really have the infrastructure to help that happen at a faster rate. And we didn't have a place for students to get practical management experience managing money. And that's where the idea of the fund came from. And that's where me and a few other students said, okay, what if we built it? What if we created it? And then not just helped ourselves get good jobs and offers, but help other students as well. It's also branched out to, starting companies and things like that. But I think as you talk about that journey in the process, it's trying to get comfortable with failing, learning from the failure, and then, trying to take advantage of opportunities that were given to you and make the most of them as well. So, but happy to double click on, any of those stuff too as we get deeper.
Yeah. Oh man, that's amazing. So the purpose of our podcast today, right? Some of the topics we want to talk about is entrepreneurship, investing, networking with purpose, which you've kind of touched on already, and also financial literacy, right? So a lot of everything you've done really connects to financial literacy. So I want to start with financial literacy. Starting a student-run fund, and when we think of the state of financial literacy today, right? 1 in 3 Americans will tell you they need more financial literacy. What are some of the challenges you faced starting that fund from a perspective of financial literacy?
Yeah.
Educating these students and being able to run a 6-figure fund with students, how much of a learning curve was it?
Yeah.
And, once you got there, right, what did that feel like?
Yeah.
What does that future, or how much work needs to be done with what you've already started?
Yeah, great question. I mean, it's funny because we were still learning every day. I mean, the mistakes we made, the investments we made, because obviously we weren't professional investors, so we were learning through the process. So it's funny to kind of think back to those moments. But when we talk about financial literacy, something that I think is extremely important. I think a lot of the things that I've experienced and done it in my life has been revolved around finance and education, and put those two things together, financial education. And I'm a really big proponent of that. So growing up as someone who wasn't exposed to that at all, didn't have that finance background, finance experience, didn't grow up in a family where that was talked about all the time. I think for me, learning and exploring what that actually meant, it just opened up like a door of opportunity for me. And when that happened for me, and then it happened to folks around me, I was like, how do we help more students learn more about financial literacy? So when you talk about that, and you talk about it in the lens of the fund, what was hard is when we went to start this fund, the big elephant in the room was, how are you going to educate people? Like, how are you going to actually teach them about financial concepts? So when you go and try and make an investment, right, people are competent, right, and they can articulate what they're kind of walking through their investments, their thought process, their thesis. Well, how do you actually build that out? And so what we had to first start off with was the education piece. So it was educating students. And the way that we went about it is saying, let's create a 10-week program where we can walk students through from the most basic financial concepts, such as personal finance things that you can help for yourself. Because like one of our driving forces was, we believe everybody should learn how to invest. Whether you're a finance student or not, you should be able to know how to invest for your personal life, because that's a big part of generating wealth and how a lot of people will generate their wealth. So we went to start at the most basic concepts for, if you were a political science major, a bio major, you could still understand this and use it in your own life, and then build upon more accounting, valuation concepts. So for us, it was, how do you build that program? How do you make it comprehensive enough, but also not too long to where it becomes too much of a burden to school as well? So that was a good balance for us. But that was the first step. It was teach students first. So what we did is we created a board of about 18 people. We had all of them run through the program that we had built. And we built it through allocating resources from online, from really great investors, and putting it in a really easy step-by-step program where they can understand it. So we just went there, aggregated the best stuff we could find, and then that's how we started to educate students. And then once we had the really like that foundation set, then it was, okay, let's go get the money and then let's educate more students and make a better program. So it all starts with education, and that was the fun, and that was our process. And to this day, that's the biggest part of the program. It's like educating students. And then investments are also nice, but it's more about, can you educate them so they can take it here and then go anywhere with that knowledge. So it's great.
Yeah. I love that you use education as the foundation, because I think as a long-term thinker, as myself, I think sometimes we underestimate the power of education, right? Once you're educated, it's like no one can take that away from you.
It's powerful.
And you can iterate your education in so many ways, right? You can pick up a book and it gives you new ideas. But because you have that strong foundation from education, you're never afraid. I think for people who are looking to build wealth, I think one thing they should really focus on is how do you build a strong educational foundation so that you can walk into a library and pick up any book and be confident to read it, no matter what the topic is, right? And I think that's really, really important. So I love that you mentioned that. One thing I wanted to talk about is financial habits, right? Especially starting this fund. Could you talk about how you managed people's financial habits in that space?
Yeah, absolutely. And a great point you just mentioned is, I think habits are extremely important, right? I think we talk about teaching people the basics of finance. Then the next piece is, okay, how do you teach them how to be a financier, how to work in finance, right? And that comes with habits, and that comes with, the things that you do on a day-to-day basis. And for us, the way that we went about that is, a part of our job was to help students get really great careers in finance. And with that comes the ability to recruit. And with that becomes having the habits of, okay, what does it look like to work in finance? So a lot of things that we would do is we would do a lot of professional development things around finance. And we took our viewpoint was, if we could help you become really strong from a personal finance standpoint to where you felt comfortable enough to where you could invest on your own, that would make you that much more confident to invest with us in our fund. So the approach that we take is, how do we teach you how to have really good personal financial habits first? And that comes with simple things like, understanding, like, things like budgeting in your own life, right? Things like, knowing how to spend, knowing how to generate wealth, knowing like what is even the stock market, and, what are ETFs versus individual stocks, right? Just like walking through those basic concepts that people just don't have access to. I mean, it's funny because you go through school and there's so much great, rich education you get, but sometimes you leave school and it's like, man, I don't even know how to walk through my own budget. Like, I'm starting my own life and I don't know how to do my budget. I don't even know, make sure I'm not spending too much. Like, do I save? Do I invest here? Do I do ETF, mutual fund? So we try to get ahead of that and create really good habits of, saving and investing. And if you can learn that for yourself and learn, okay, there's different asset classes. You can do real estate, a less risky asset. You can invest in stocks, more liquid assets, right? Those basic concepts, then you can not only help us in the fund do better, right? Because you're more competent, but at the same time, like, hopefully when you leave after 4 years, you yourself feel like, okay, I'm confident enough to actually invest for myself and in my own future. I think that's pretty good.
Yeah. And what about the financial decisions that people ended up making, right? Once they've built these financial habits.
Yeah.
What's the relationship there?
Yeah. So what we were doing in that fund, right, is we were making a lot of decisions on where we were putting money capital. So what we would do is, we would raise money and then we would, make a recommendation to the endowment saying, this is where we should put this capital. And what we really tried to rely on is a lot of really putting our minds together, because again, we were students, right? So we weren't claiming to be some really great hedge fund investors, but at the same time, we thought we had some unique value to add. And with that, what we would do is we would have a pitch process, right? So we would have those habits that we talked about. And then the way we put our process for making a decision is we would have people split up into different groups and different sectors. And based on your sector, it could be technology, it could be healthcare. You would then go and screen and find companies, and then you would make pitches on those companies. And you would say, this is why, here's a catalyst for this investment, right? Here's why the team is really strong, right? Here's a model walking through the projections for this company. Here's comparing it to other assets, right? And here's some risks that we're seeing for the company. Here are some tailwinds. So you would really walk through this kind of calculated process that we set out for you on all these different things on what makes a strong company. And then you would get experience at actually pitching that, right, to the board, walking through that, and then putting that into practice. And that kind of experience was really cool to see. At one point, I think we had about 60 students in that program, and we would have like over 100 applications every year to get into it, and we would take about 15 to 20 people kind of each kind of quarter. And I think for us, getting that type of like attention and kind of interest showed us that okay, this stuff is pretty valuable. Like people want this, they want to learn about this stuff, and they want this process. So the way we put it into practice was, having the sectors, having the analysts in the sectors, doing the research, doing the decks, pitching it, walking through it, and then having a group vote and decide like, okay, what makes this strong? What makes this weak, right? How do we look at that with our current portfolio? Does it make sense for our portfolio? So all these different things we're learning as students was really invaluable, and it helped us, hopefully helped us, as we get into the real world now in our careers.
Yeah, man, that's amazing. And so when I think about building wealth also, right, I think there are so many instances where certain people get lucky in building wealth, right? It's maybe they make a few good decisions and then they get lucky, and that just compounds and they end up being wealthy. So some young adults might say, you know what, there's no point in me trying to build wealth and learning the fundamentals or the principles of building wealth. I might just get lucky. Is that a real thing?
Is luck a real thing? It's a great question. I think about that a lot, actually. I think the harder you work, the luckier you get. So what I mean by that is I think luck has a lot to do, you probably heard this is a very common saying, but right, when you're prepared for opportunities, that's where you have that luck. So for me, it's the harder I work, the luckier I'm going to get. So if I work harder, right, more opportunities come and I'm more prepared, then that's luck. So for me, that's how I view it. And I think for people that are thinking like, man, it's a lot of work and it's a lot of time to put into building wealth. I have to read a lot of things, I have to go through a lot of processes. I'll just wait until I find something and get lucky. I think what you're doing is you're selling yourself short. I think, you really have an opportunity to, if you say for the next 3 to 6 months, I'm going to put blinders on, I'm going to learn these things, I'm going to try and build wealth for myself. And you look up after those 6 months, you'll be amazed at how far ahead you'll be and how opportunities will just come to you. I mean, you'll be on LinkedIn, other platforms. People just say, hey, I see this, I saw that, interested in this or that. When you put yourself out there, right, you start to, get out there into the world, you start to learn, things come to you, opportunities come to you. So I think that for me was, a big thing about me for luck was that opportunity, meet preparedness, and then luck comes from that. And so whenever people talk about, man, that was lucky, I'm like, it's probably right. The luck definitely comes from that. But at the same time, right, the harder you work, the smarter you work, and the luckier you'll get. So that's how I view it. And that's, how I view opportunities and having opportunities. And that's what I try and look for is like, I'm trying to accomplish something or go through a certain journey or a certain process, for sure.
Thinking of luck and then now building that dream career using networking. You've done a lot of work with helping people to be able to network, right? Meritcy is something that you started to help people to be able to network and build relationships in college, mentor them, get them ready for interviews. Talk about the power of networking, because I think this is something we've talked about on the podcast many, many times, right? But for young adults that are maybe just getting started in college, or young adults that are just getting started in the workforce, right? What is the power of networking?
Yeah, I think networking to me is the most important thing in any career or recruiting process. It's completely changed my life. I think networking, when I started to learn about it, and by the way, people say networking all the time. What I love to do when we talk about networking is like define actually what that means, because many times students will come and they would say, everyone tells me to network, but what actually is networking and how do I network? And to me, networking is really building relationships with someone. It doesn't necessarily have to be for a certain outcome, right? But maintaining that over a certain period of time to reach a certain goal, right? So for me, what I define and what I think really, really important with networking is the career outcome you want and where you're at today. What's really in the way of getting to that is networking. Of course, there's resumes, there's interview prep, there's all these other processes that go into it. But networking really, to me, is that core piece and that core function. So you mentioned Meritcy and the work we're doing there. Really, what we try to do is we work with students who are trying to reach a certain career outcome, are trying to work on professional development, whatever it may be. And for us, it's how do we show you a scalable, really unique, fast way to network and talk to a lot of people and meet them, so you yourself, right, can help find better opportunities. And when I look at my own journey, I remember when I was recruiting, I had about 170 plus networking conversations before I got that first big internship. That was over maybe a year-ish time frame. So you can imagine how many calls every week and how many things are happening. And I think I try to encourage people to not see it as a means to an end, right? I'm not just talking to someone to get something, right? It's actually trying to share value and exchange value. And the way you do that is you make sure you're actually asking them really good questions. You spent time learning about them, and you treat it as an actual conversation, not just I need something from you, right? So I think when you think about it that way, it becomes fun, it becomes fruitful, it becomes a really cool opportunity. And for me, I'll never stop networking. Networking to me is a lifetime event. It's something you do now and forever, for your career, for your life, socially, whatever it may be. So at Meritcy, we really focus on teaching students networking skills that we've learned that have helped us scale to really great opportunities and help them do the same thing with our processes. So I think networking to me is that golden ticket. And if you can learn that, you'll be well on your way to the outcomes you want in your career.
Yeah. So you talked about how networking helped you to land that first big internship. Can you dive a little more into, how did you use networking to get your dream job today, right?
Yeah.
Or how have you used networking to get something that you really wanted? How did you approach it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I approach networking in what I would call a funnel or formulaic process. And what I mean by that is I have a step-by-step way that I approach networking. And so the question of how do you use networking and kind of get that job, what we talk about a lot in Meritcy, what we like to teach our students is having a process for it. So the first step is you really have to show some type of demonstrated interest. So for me, when I was recruiting for investment banking, for example, before you start reaching out to people who work in the industry or recruiters, you first have to actually set up, let me show them I'm actually interested in this. And how you do that is you find a way to get experience without having experience. And what I mean by that is you get involved on campus, so your investment banking club, you start a club, for example, you join your finance club, you join info sessions, you go to career fairs, you're actually actively trying to learn before you ask for help. So it's the helping yourself before you get help, kind of first piece of it. I think a lot of times people just pass that part and just jump to the conversation. It's people want to help people who help themselves. So first help yourself, learn as much as you can, and then start networking. So after you've learned as much as you can, for me, the next step is identifying the right people to reach out to. So instead of sending 100 random emails and LinkedIn DMs, it's trying to be a little more calculated in that approach, looking for people who have something similar to you, whether it's school, interests, background, experiences. That way they are a lot more likely to say yes to you. Then after you're able to do that, the next step is how do you craft compelling outreach? So how do you actually send someone a message where you actually spent time about them, you did research on their background, and then you're very concise with that message as well. And then you get into the piece of, okay, you're on the call, prep for the call, ask the right questions, and then after that, follow up, maintain over time. So for me, it's the whole process behind networking. I don't see it as send message, get call, you're done. I see it as a lot more to that. And I think if you can view it that way and have a process and steps for networking, it becomes a process that's a lot more fruitful for you, and you can see a lot more benefit from it because you'll see it work more often for you. I think many times people say, I send messages, no one gets back to me. I think it's because a lot of times you're missing a piece of that puzzle. You didn't reach the right person. You didn't first show that you wanted to be helped by helping yourself. You didn't send the right message, right? You didn't prep well for the call. So I think there's a lot of steps to that. And for us, I think we focus on the steps in the process for networking. And that way we're more efficient and effective when we start networking in the first place.
Yeah. I love that you mentioned helping yourself, right? I have this saying that no one wants to do the 80% of the work for you, right? Yeah. So it's always, in my perspective, at least, I think it's an 80-20 rule. Someone might argue that, but I think you have to do 80% of the work.
Right.
And then someone sees you and says, "Whoa, you know what, Darius? You've done 80% of the work. For me to do 20% for you, that's easy. I can come in and quickly be able to help you out."
Absolutely.
That makes networking more fruitful, to your point. Now, once, we've actually connected with the people that we want to network with, once we've purposefully connected with these people, what is the next step in actually building those relationships? How do you go about that?
Absolutely. So I think it rarely happens after one call. So after you're able to actually, you mentioned you get on the phone with someone, you have the opportunity to talk to them. I think a lot of it comes with actually maintaining that over time. So how that looks is the way I kind of do it. I'm a big spreadsheet guy. So I like to make sure I'm tracking all the things that I'm doing. So I think this is actually a lesson for a lot of things in life. You want to be purposeful with what you're doing. So you just want to reach out to someone and then that's it. Then you're done, right? It's okay, what'd you talk about? Take notes on it, right? And then have a list, their name, follow up, have a date to follow up with them again. So I think for me, a lot of it comes with following up again after a good conversation. So once you get the call, you want to prepare for the call. You want to do your research on the person. You want to make sure that you don't just ask them a question like, what's your day-to-day like, right? You want to get a bit deeper than that. You want to make sure you ask them questions that only they can answer, not just questions that you can find online. And that way, when you're on the call is a lot more engaging for them as they actually feel like they actually are being asked thoughtful questions that they can walk through. And then after that piece of it, your job is to say, okay, can they maybe help me connect to someone else? Hey, do you know anyone else I can talk to in your network, right? So you use their network to grow, you use their network to grow your own network. But also don't just end there. I think a lot of times if you have a really good conversation, don't let the connection die. And that's why having a spreadsheet helps, is make sure you're tracking who you're talking to. And then the next step is, okay, let's follow up with them, right? Let's make sure that in 3-6 months we can hop on a call again, and then talk again. And then when you talk to them 2 or 3, 4 times, you'd be amazed at how willing people are to help you. They've already invested an hour or 2 hours in talking to you. Now the next step is, you know what, how can I be helpful to you in your career journey, right? We spent time talking, we got to know each other, and then that connection's now built. It's how many people you'll have a really strong connection with that are willing to help you and can really open up doors that weren't there for you in the first place. So for me, it's really, doing a lot more after the call that can help you in your networking journey.
Yeah, amazing. And one of the things that you also talk about is how sometimes you reach out to people and you get rejected, right? Even when you are looking for that dream job, you dealt with a lot of rejections.
Absolutely.
For us young adults, getting started right now, how should we be thinking about rejections?
Rejections are opportunities. I remember first year in college, I applied to 100 jobs. I think maybe 2 were like, hey, come talk to us, but really were disinterested anyway when I went and talked to them. Maybe because I was applying a lot of things that didn't fit a first year in college. Maybe it was a junior internship. But I think the point is like rejections are a part of the process. You only need one yes. You need one person, one company to be committed to you. And I think what helps me is I make a target list of companies that I'm really passionate about, and I spend more time on those companies. So I think there is merit to the numbers game, applying to as many as you can. There's merit to that because obviously you can find something that, based on if I send 1,000 applications, I'll get 100 responses. However, I think for me, a more calculated approach is make a target list, right? So for me, if I'm interested in investment banking, right, that's my dream career. How do I make a list of not just the top banks, but some of the other banks, right, that maybe fit my interests, and actually make a target list, and then make a list of people who work at those places, and then actually reach out to them and talk to them. Because what you'll find is when you apply to a job online, the chances of you getting rejected are so high. However, if you apply online and then reach out to somebody and they know who you are and they talk to you, that drops down a little bit, right? Especially if you have a good conversation with them. So for me, rejections are a part of the process. And I think right now, I've actually now don't get so discouraged with them actually. I see them as opportunities. Like, okay, that one didn't work out, on to the next one. Now, the more rejections I get, I'm actually getting closer to that one acceptance I need. And that, for me, is how I stay motivated in the process. And look, I know it's easier said than done. I know getting that email is never easy. Getting that, hey, we regret to inform you kind of email. But when I think about it, that puts me one step closer to my acceptance email. And you never know how close you are to it. So giving up, there's actually this photo this really popular photo of this man who's mining for gold. And he's mining. He gets very close to the gold, and he's right there, and he can't see it, but he's right there, and he gives up. But the gold is right on the other side, right? 2 more, he's almost there. But he can't see, and he gives up. So you never know how close you are to that gold. So just never give up, and I think is a big part of it. As rejections, opportunities that will eventually lead to that one yes you need, and then you're off to the races.
Man, I love that analogy that you used there with the man, digging the gold and you're so close, because you're right. Sometimes you never really know how close you are to your goal. And, that moment you give up literally could change. It could change everything. Yeah. I hear sayings like you're one connection away from your dream job, right? You're one conversation away from that, maybe your dream salary that you're looking for. So you should absolutely never ever give up. Man, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
That's really helpful.
Yeah.
So another aspect of your life is entrepreneurship.
Right.
You started Merticy.
Yep.
And you've also been involved in a lot of other things.
Yeah.
Right. We've already talked about the student run fund that you helped start. What inspires you to own stuff or even start something?
Yeah, that's a great question. Big fan of the ownership economy, which is something that I view as, how do you find ways to get ownership in your life? Ownership of what you're doing, the work you're doing. And for me, the way that looks, and the way that I do that is a lot through investing and through entrepreneurship. And so for me, I've always had this entrepreneurial bug, if you will, since I was young. Always wanted to start different things. Remember in high school, started a myriad of different online companies. Could be an e-commerce company, could be a digital advertising company, and all the different things that I've started. I've really had one focus in mind, and it really isn't more. So I think the way they view entrepreneurship, it really isn't for, I guess, the outcomes, think the money or like that. It has to really be one, mission driven, and then two, driven for a sense of like, how do I get my ability to maximize my time, right? So if I can own my own things, if I can be an entrepreneur, I can maximize my time for myself and use it in more creative and different ways. And so for me, you mentioned one of them, Meritcy, obviously now, but that really is a passion project for me. I view that as, a social enterprise in a sense. It's when you can really be so associated to the problem that like you think about it all the time, that's how you know, okay, I have to start something to solve this. I think entrepreneurship for the sake of entrepreneurship doesn't make sense because it's too hard for that. There's too many roadblocks. It's too hard. Too many things to go through. I've had many failed ventures that I tried to start that I was never really into it. It just failed. So for me, it's like for entrepreneurship and ownership, it's you really have to be associated to the problem. You have to really feel a connection to it and want to do something about it. And with Meritcy, right, that problem had to be with students in the career space, the recruiting process, the knowledge, the access to it, the networking knowledge. I just had to do something about it because I know how much it benefited and added to my life. And that's why I wanted to start it. And the last one I make is entrepreneurship doesn't just have to be something you do outside of a job or outside of work. I think entrepreneurship can happen in many different ways. It can happen on the job. Really, it's more of a mindset to me, and it's the ability to take initiative, right? Obviously comes, when you're able to do your own things or your own ventures. But I think just an entrepreneurial mindset flows in a lot of different ways. And for me, whether I'm at a job or I'm building something or they're coexisting, I can always have that mindset of always wanting to solve problems, be initiative, solve things, and of course have ownership over what I'm doing as well.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I think entrepreneurship is definitely like on a rise today, right? A lot of like young adults want to start their own things. Yeah. And before we even started recording, I was telling you about how, back in the day, or usually when you're speaking to your parents, it's where they think more about your security, right? Yeah. So it's, work hard, go to college, get a job, make sure you get that retirement, make sure you're saving. When you're 65, you can retire and go enjoy your life in the Bahamas. But that's not what we want
not
today.
At all.
We want to own our own time, which is the most important thing.
Yeah.
To the point of what you just said. Owning your own time is actually what entrepreneurship is, but it's also very time consuming, right? Could you talk about some of the rewards and the challenges, right, that you go through as an entrepreneur or someone that's looking to start something and build it from the ground up?
Absolutely. I mean, you always have there's a saying called the cold start problem is how to even get started. I think that's the hardest part. And it's all about your motivation to start. And I think that's what's going to keep you going. I think the hard part of entrepreneurship is you're going to have obstacles, you're going to have downturns. It's what's keeping you going. Why are you even doing this in the first place? And I think, again, your motivations have to be in the right place. Because entrepreneurship, especially with our generation, like extremely is glamorized. Like that's what we want to do. We want to have our own thing. We want to do our own thing. But when it comes time to do it, I think for us, we have to experience what it's like and learn that, okay, it actually is tough, right? It's a tough thing to do. And it really, everyone can do it, but it isn't for everybody, if that makes sense. So I think really understanding, is this for me? Is this what I want to do? And also, there's nothing wrong either, I think, for a generation of having that job, right? Being able to have that for yourself. And then when you feel like you're ready, then you go take that job instead of saying, you know what, I'm just going to go right away with no knowledge and then do it. And then that's how sometimes you can get people who are sometimes not as encouraged to be entrepreneurs anymore. So for me, it's really that cold start. Like, how do you get started? Have your motivations and drive in the right place. And if you have that in the right place, you're doing it for the right reasons. Next step is how do you get really good mentors and advisors around you? Because what I've learned, especially being young, is that like there's so much I do not know. If all the things I don't know could fill up this room, 10 rooms, a million rooms. I just don't know what I don't know. And with that, it's like, how do you get mentors and people around you who do know, who can help you, who can really kind of help you dodge some of the things that are coming and it'll help you see, your blind spots that you're just missing. So for me, it's once you have that mission, that passion, it's like, okay, who can I find around me that can help me? A lot of times entrepreneurship is seen as a solo journey, which I think it is. There's going to be a lot of nights where you're alone, but if you have a co-founder, a partner, or you have advisors around you, it makes it so much more fulfilling to do it, right? And then you wake up like, you know what, it's not just for me, it's for them too. And then that can give you more drive. So for me, it's all about the drive with it and knowing that you can be an entrepreneur while you have a job. You can be an entrepreneur if you don't have a job. You can be an entrepreneur in many different ways. You can have a side income. You can have a side business, right? There's so many ways to start your own thing. And I think our generation is realizing that, and we want that more. The 65 and then wait to go on the beach, that's kind of going away for us. I think for us, it's definitely more about, how can we figure this thing out, use our access and knowledge. We have so many resources now at our age, and how do we use that to figure this out? I think for folks out there trying to do it, I think it's having, a really aligned motivation, finding really good mentors around you, and then execution after that.
Wow. A couple of things that I want to dive into that you just mentioned, which is execution.
Yeah.
And also any entrepreneurs that maybe have come before you or are still there that inspire you to take action.
Wow. So some I know and some I don't know. I'll just do one for each. One of them that I do know was a mentor of mine. So I mentioned I worked for a real estate tech startup when I was in high school for 2 summers. And the founder of that company, still close to today, strong mentor today, is one of the strongest founders that I know. Built, sold multiple companies. I was watching him build and scale this company. And actually what I learned from him, a lot of what I learned from him, is a focus on execution. I think there's a lot of focus on planning and strategizing and all this other, which I think is great. I myself am someone who's like analysis paralysis. I'm always analyzing. But you just got to get out there and execute, right? You got to get out there and solve problems. You got to put a product out there, put something out there. And I learned that from him. I learned the ability to execute quickly, or more so efficiently. I think is what I learned from him. And I think that inspires me to want to go out there and take action, is just really seeing him take action. And then someone that I don't know, I'll use someone that's actually have a lot of common ones, but someone who's maybe not as known is someone named Stephen Bartlett. He has actually a podcast called Darius of a CEO. And he's someone I watched when I was in high school, actually. I saw him build his first company, Social Chain. He built that up, and I was watching his journey, listening to his podcast. And that inspired me at a young age to take action and do something too, because I saw someone who, actually didn't want to go the more traditional route, wanted to do something himself, wanted to be surrounded by people who also wanted that, and he made it happen. And for me, what I learned from him, the other side of it was just really having the drive to keep going. And I think a lot of times, again, you don't know how close you are. Now there is merit to failing fast, right? There is merit to you don't want to do the same thing over and over again, right? But also there's a benefit to, if you believe in it, you really have a passion for it, and okay, this is going to work, go for it and don't give up and keep the drive through all the hard times. And sometimes it won't work out. That's fine. That's a part of it. But you'll be amazed by, if you just really stick to it, how many times it will. There's one quote that I'll end with. Is I heard this, I believe it was from the YC, the founder of YC, was that a lot of startups don't fail. They just disappear. People just stop working on it. And I think for you, you to keep going, keep working, and then you'll see what happens after that.
Man, that's a lot to unpack there. Darius of a CEO is a podcast that I also listen to.
Great podcast.
Yeah, I love listening to that podcast. So shout out to Steven, right?
Yep,
that's his name.
Yep, yeah.
Great podcast. A lot of great guests on there also. Yeah. So thank you for bringing that up. So you did mention execution and also keeping your head down, right? To just do the work.
Yeah.
We're talking about entrepreneurship right now. And one of the things that I think sometimes people forget is, when you're an entrepreneur, when you're trying to build something from the ground up, usually there isn't someone that comes in and says, hey, Darius, you made that checklist yesterday and you haven't gone through it. Are you going to finish it? You made a plan to put this out and you haven't put it out yet. Are you going to put it out?
Yeah.
There's no one doing that for you. You kind of need to get up and be able to do that. But sometimes you hit a point where you lose that motivation, right? You lose that drive. And that's where passion comes in, because the passion creates that emotional connection to whatever the problem is that you're trying to solve or whatever you're trying to do. A good example of that is Meritcy, which you started, right? Yeah. I think your drive to help as many students as possible makes the mission bigger than yourself.
Absolutely.
Right? It's so big that it's not about, do you feel like doing the work today?
Right.
Even if you don't feel like doing the work today, you have Michael that's dependent on you and expecting you to put out a new checklist for him to be able to get ready for that interview, right? And so talk about how passion is important to keep that dream going, especially when it gets hard.
Oh, absolutely. And it gets hard. It gets hard a lot. And I think, you're absolutely right. It's when you have that passion and it's aligned with a mission that you're really focused on. And again, you think about it all the time. So like you mentioned, like when you think, man, I don't feel like doing it today, it's think about all the people who are A, counting on you, right? Or B, looking forward to what you have to offer to them. And I think you really hit the nail on the head when you mentioned that like drive will take you so far, but I think your dedication to something, which comes from your passion, your dedication to it will just keep the drive going when times seem hard and seem difficult. And I think also one thing I have to mention is no one is telling you have to complete the checklist and do this, right? It is a lot of your alone time. However, the people you surround yourself around, for example, having co-founders, having partners, having people there with you is such an added benefit. I mean, it's really hard to do successful things by yourself. I would argue that not many people succeed alone. There's always someone else helping them, someone else in their journey. I know for me, a big reason behind Meritcy was I was someone that was a huge benefactor of having so many people around me that help me. Mentors, peers, family support system, that it's almost like, how can I not pay for it? How can I not try and help other people? It's like, I know that if there's kids out there that don't have that, how much they're missing. And I'm like, why? I should be able to be the bridge to that, because I just feel this obligation almost to keep doing that, because I was, fortunate enough to have that for myself. So when you have those kind of experiences that you have, it can never stop. I know whether it's something that you're doing on the side, something you're doing full time, something you're doing as a passion project, a social enterprise, which is again how I see Meritcy, passion project, social enterprise, something I'm doing to help other people. You just always have to keep going. So I think for people out there that are looking to start their own thing, it's that motivation alignment is so key, because that's what's going to keep you going when it's late at night, when something's crashed, you have to start all over again. The video didn't work, you do it all over again. Maybe you're doing a podcast and the whole thing didn't record, if you do it over, like those are the times where it's like, okay, you know what? I'm gonna run it back and do it again, because this is what I want to do and I love it so much, and I'm gonna do it again. It can't be, man, I was looking forward to making X from this, and now forget it, because that's not enough to keep you pushing, keep you going. It has to be something deeper than that. So I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah, man. Yeah, you're right. And I've had my fair share experiences with that where,
yeah,
man, I've recorded and, sometimes I listen back and I'm like, man, this audio is terrible.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to figure out a way to reach out to this guest and let them know, hey, look, that audio wasn't good.
Yeah.
And we may have to re-record that just to get that great quality, which is important. Or sometimes, you create something, you put so much work into it and it just doesn't work out.
Absolutely.
And you need to try again and continue to, iterate till you get to the point where you need to get to. So thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
I quite remember I was talking to someone recently and she's a designer. She was trying to work with GWP podcast and she was trying to understand, what is the foundation behind GWP podcast? What is the bones? Like, what are the design assets for GWP podcast? And one thing that I told her was, to be honest with you, I can't give you sort of like a blueprint of how GWP podcast started, because the moment I had the idea to start the podcast, I just started it. And my whole perspective always with anything, I call it just get the reps in, right? Just get the reps in. It doesn't need to be perfect, and that doesn't mean, and to your point, right, you did mention this, it doesn't mean just creating something, but efficiency is really important. But your vision should always be, how do I make this better, right? And there's no way you make it better without actually starting, right? And so my process with everything that I do is always get it started. And once you start, just iterate and always make it better. Your next iteration should always be better than the one you created before. And that's always my approach, which brings me into startups, right? You're more like a startup guy, right? You're doing these startups, and I think your approach is sort of like social entrepreneurship.
Yeah, absolutely.
When I try to wrap my head around what you're doing, you do create things that sort of make social change.
Yeah.
Whether it's getting students ready for their next career, whether it's preparing them and giving them those interview tips. Talk about startups. What is your experience with startups?
Yeah. So I think a lot of what you mentioned is, absolutely true. I think when you think about the startup world, for example, a lot of it is like, you just got to get out there. You have to get stuff out there. But it's way easier said than done. And I think if you have the ability, like you mentioned, for yourself to just go up there and get it out there, that's such a great ability you have, because it's hard for a lot of people to just go out there and get it out there. Right? It's hard to do that. And I think for me, when I think about the startup world or the startup space, right, as a whole, I think a lot of what comes to my mind is people that have really big visions that need to learn how to execute on those visions. And I think a lot of the execution comes from getting stuff out there, like you mentioned, but also comes from improving from feedback. I think that I've learned is, I remember I used to start things. I think your point of getting things out there is very true. I think the other side to that is you need to get feedback as well from people, right? So feedback from customers. So for me, I would put stuff out there and get nothing back from the customer. It's like, and then I'm like, oh, why this didn't work? It's like you never talked to your customers before. You haven't learned what they actually want. And you mentioned the fact on social enterprises, I think that's really important. It's like doing things that hopefully going to have a positive impact on someone else's life and journey. You really have to get their feedback, right? Because you're trying to help them and trying to make a positive impact on their life. So how I think about it is put something out there, but make sure I'm getting feedback, right? And I'm more than willing and more than happy to do things for free, to need to charge for it. I just want feedback from the person, right? Have a call with them. It doesn't matter to me. For me, it's like, how can I make this product as strong as I can make it? Get feedback from the customers, because that's going to make it better for everyone else, right? There's things that I think I know and I think I know how to do. And a lot of it, I have to tell myself, it's like, you don't really know that. I think, like, you know what? I like it this way, so does everyone else. I learn this way, so does everyone else. That's not true. Everyone learns differently. So my job is, okay, how can I understand the way our customers learn, understand what they want, and then try and find that happy medium to what I can provide and what they want and they need, and then build that. So I know that when they're watching it, when they're going through it, when they're learning, when they're talking, when they're in the sessions, they're getting the maximum value for them, and they're putting themselves in the best position to go in, whether it's to land that career or, get a job, start a business, whatever their outcome may be. They have the best shot at doing that through what we have to offer. And that only comes from feedback, only comes from talking to customers. So that's how I view startups. I view it as, you have to find a way to get super close and understand your customer as great as, as deep as you can, and then try and build what's something that they want. And it's hard to do. But if you can do that, if you can execute, put stuff out there, get feedback, do it again, you can build something strong. And then now the challenge becomes getting it to enough people in enough hands. But if you can solve the first problem, which is actually building something that they want, then you can start to solve, okay, how do I distribute, how do I give this to a lot of people at scale?
Yeah, that's amazing. And I think there's a lot of entrepreneurial spirited people that listen to GWP podcast. Yeah. So they might have some ideas of, maybe having a startup, right? Yeah. So, or even working in a startup.
Yeah.
If someone wants to either have their own startup, or what are some of the challenges and the rewards of working in a startup?
Yeah, for sure. I think a lot of the challenges is you don't get that strong of a training, right? So if it's one of your first jobs, I think in a startup, there's pros and cons. I think the cons are the training is very limited compared to a larger company, right? The pro of a larger company is you go in there's a lot of great training for you, right? You can learn things faster. They actually invest in your education. At a startup, it's like you got to come in and really, it's like, I want you to do X, Y, and Z, but you figure out how to do it, right? And you find your own way to do it. But for some people like me, honestly, that can be a pro. Some people like having that autonomy. They like learning by doing, learning, by experiencing, on their own, versus having a structured process of learning. So I think that's, to me, some of the largest difference. But a big benefit is you get, even if it doesn't work out, the experience you get is going to trump anything else. I mean, seeing a startup fail, going through that process, or seeing a startup succeed, obviously there's a lot of benefits in a lot of different ways, can just add a lot more value to your journey in your career process. So I think for folks who are interested in thinking about startup and thinking about weighing the pros and the cons, it's really about you and your risk tolerance. Like, are you in a place in your life where you can take that risk to go learn, move fast, break things, as I say, right? Or are you not? Maybe you need something more structured, and that's okay. And then you need to go learn and do that process yourself, and then you can jump in, right, to that space. You can do both at the same time. I mean, go have this very structured learning process, and then on your own time, right, you can do things that you're passionate about. So I think, we live in a world where we're fortunate enough where we can do multiple things at one time, and find out what we like and what we don't like, and then really focus in on that thing that we do enjoy. And then once we kind of feel like it's at a point where we can put our time into it, then we jump into it, and then we see where it goes. So I think for us, if you're on the fence, I think working for a large company, learning is a great first step, and then seeing when you're ready to go jump on your own.
Yeah, that's amazing. And one thing that comes into mind also is, which is the next topic that I wanted to shift into, is sort of building your story, right? So when I think of entrepreneurship, when I think of students or young adults that are looking for new opportunities, whether a new job or starting a new company or anything like that, I think it's important to be able to build your story, right? What kind of story do you want to tell? And I was having this conversation not too long ago, and what I was saying was, a lot of times when you think of brands, a brand sometimes is mostly just a story, right? There's a story that people connect to.
Yeah.
So when you think of Nike, for example, the story you're probably connecting to is maybe Phil Knight, right? And his story and how he wanted to find the best running shoes, and he had to go to Japan and discover the shoes and finally bring it back, right? Yeah. Or you think of any brand, right? Whether it's like Coca-Cola or, whether it's Apple, right? There's all the Steve Jobs story, right? That connects Apple, and it builds these emotional connections. Same thing if you're a young adult and you're just getting started on your journey, you're looking for that job. When you're going to that interview, what is the story that you want to tell these people, right? Yeah. Because sometimes people are not going to remember what you said, but the stories that you tell them, the images that you imprint in their brains, they remember that forever, right? So for us young adults, how important is it to have a story?
Absolutely. I think it's extremely important, right? I think as people, we're storytellers and we love hearing stories, right? And I think especially you talk about your career journey, your career process, or even as a founder, honestly, it's all about storytelling. A way I view storytelling as a creative way, especially in this sense of selling, right? It's a creative way of selling, because what you're doing, especially, when you're looking for a job, is you're explaining, you're talking about yourself, but you're also sharing like what makes you unique, what makes you different, what's your X factor, right? The why are you here? What drives you? What are your passions? And I think when you think about stories from that lens, you see how important stories are. People fall in love with stories. I think, when you're somewhere interviewing for a job, and when they're going to go after and go in the room and decide who gets the job, it's going to come down to a lot of the times, right? Who was the most memorable? What story that they remember? Like what captured their attention? And so I think crafting your story is a big part of any process. And how I would go about doing that, I think the first step to crafting your story and storytelling, you have to really understand yourself. So you have to almost like quiz yourself and say, okay, who actually am I? And like, what am I trying to convey to X audience, right? Because every story, depending on who you're talking to, it's going to be different, right? Depending on you're talking to a recruiter, talking to someone at a company, depending on, if you're trying to raise money, go hire someone, it's going to be different. So I think it's really about crafting your story towards that audience and being intentional about understanding who am I as a person and what am I trying to get and what's my outcome from this, and how is my story a right fit? How is what my experience is a right fit for the culture, for the opportunity? What value can I bring? What value can I add? So I think being intentional about your story is extremely important. I think taking time to craft it, write it out, right? Say it, right? Remember it, have it handy. I think is so important, because that's what you're going to have in your life. I mean, you're always selling stories. You want to raise money for a company? It's a story. You want to hire someone? Sell them your story about your company. You want to get a job? Sell them a story about who you are. So everything is about selling your story and telling your story and storytelling. So I would encourage everyone listening to this is try and take time to actually think about, what is my story? Who am I? Who was I when I was younger? How did I change? What qualities do I have? What do I care about? What do I value? What's my why? And that will formulate, your story, and that will really get people passionate and captivated into who you are as a person.
Yeah, and you did say remembering the story, but also writing it down.
Oh, yeah.
So it's not just about, knowing the story,
yeah,
but you should be able to sit down and write that story.
Absolutely. I think that a lot of times you don't write things down. For example, my own story, I spent a lot of time trying to craft it. And I think what you'll find is there's so many connections that make you. And you don't get here today by chance. Like, you've done things, you made decisions, people have impacted you. And when you can unpack that for yourself and figure out what that is, it's really cool to know your story. It's cool to be able to talk about your story. And people love stories, as we mentioned before. And that just really is, you showing who you are as a person and walking through yourself and experiences. So I'd encourage people, I think journaling is a great habit. I think people, when you go through things, write them down. Try and remember what they are. I think for me, another great habit that I try to have as well, for me, it's conversations. In conversations with people, also help me better understand myself and help me better understand my own learning.
The next topic that I wanted to dive into is investing. You were fortunate enough. You got started early in your college career to the point where you started a 6-figure student-run investment fund. So you did get a lot of experience with that. What are the types of investments there are in general?
Yeah, for sure. So you're right. I was fortunate enough to do it pretty early. Even before that, like getting the knowledge about the investing space. And so when I think about investing as a whole, the way that I see it, there's different asset classes where you can, put your capital and, hopefully see it grow. And when I think about investing, I definitely have like a long-term view towards it for myself personally, and like things that I want to do. There's a lot of different ways to grow your money. I think you could look at assets that have a little less risk, things like real estate, for example. A big fan of that, and things like bonds as well. For folks who have a bit more of a risk appetite, there's other ways to invest as well in the public markets. You can do it through exchange traded funds, which is like a pool of different stocks. You can do it through individual stocks, but also a thing I see is really important, especially when you're just getting out of college, is you could also look at getting other people to help you manage your money as well. So like looking at mutual funds, looking at starting there's Roth IRAs, there's IRAs, and so I think those are some of the best ways to get started with investing is having other people help you invest. But again, with investing, I think a lot of it comes with doing your own research. Would definitely recommend like not taking advice from people who don't really understand investing. I think that's one big thing too. Really like not taking advice in general. I think always doing your own research is really important. That's why I personally don't like hearing advice from people, or I don't take advice. I don't like giving advice either. I just like giving ideas on what things are out there, but really it's your own research, right? Doing things yourself, trying to figure it out. And a lot of times people are like, oh, it's time, it's effort. But hey, I mean, when it's your money and your future and, generating wealth, I think you don't want to leave anything to chance. Of course, I'm not saying you need to become an expert in finance, but just having an understanding what's happening, right? And try not to give advice. I try not to never give advice, but also try not to take advice. I try not to take advice too much. Just listen to people, listen to what they would recommend, or listen to their thoughts. I think that's a really great way to think about investing.
No, I think that's super important, right? In the world of social media today, and of course, we do not give any investment advice. We're not certified financial professionals, right? Yeah. So it's all of our ideas, and this is always for educational purposes only.
Of course.
In today's world, though, on social media, you find so much content out there in terms of people just recommending things that you should invest in, and so on. Definitely be really, really careful, especially when you're getting started. If you know anything, if there's anything that I'll tell you about investment, is rule number 1, don't lose your money, right? Do not lose that money. And look, even if you lost money, don't lose that principal. That principal always needs to come back. Like if you don't make profit, that's fine, but that principal should come back at least, especially when you're getting started. That foundation is so important, right? And it builds your psychology also. If you're losing money so early, that could kind of demotivate you and put you in a downward spiral. Absolutely. And you start to think, okay, should I have even done it? Or is this even worth it? You don't need that, right? And to your point, especially when you're getting started, using other people becomes really important. And we're so fortunate to have mechanisms in place that allows you to use other people, such as funds, right? Sometimes mutual funds could be run by a fund manager, right? So you don't need to be that expert, but you need to do your due diligence, such as you need to read their prospectus, right? Understand, okay, what is this mutual fund manager investing in? What are they motivated by? What is their track record? These are some questions that you should be asking when you're trying to use somebody's advice. And same thing on social media. If you're taking someone's advice on social media, they're telling you to invest in something, first thing you should probably ask is, what is this person's track record? What have they done in the past to prove that this advice that they're giving me right now, or this thing that they're talking about right now, is actually relevant and has value?
Absolutely. I think that's important, right? And I think, as you mentioned, we are in the age of social media. I mean, this information is everywhere. And I kind of like to say this, even my own business for Meritcy is when information is limitless, viable information is very limited. What that means is when you can get information anywhere, how do you know what's valuable and what's not of value, right? And I think a lot of that comes from who you're surrounding yourself with. So what I would do, for example, is, surround myself with people who are trying to go on the same journey or path that I'm trying to go down. Right. So if I'm, trying to explore, okay, how do I myself generate wealth? How do I start businesses? Right. How do I go ahead and do that? All right. How do I find the best opportunity for myself or asset to invest in? It's so helpful to have people around you to do it as well. I mean, I would even encourage you, if there are people around you who are also trying to do some of the things that you're trying to do, right? And then leverage each other to learn together. And I think learning with people is so much easier than doing it on your own because there's so much you don't know and there's so many things that you can miss. And so I think it plays true with entrepreneurship, plays true with investing. And I've said this a lot, but the support system is so important and who you surround yourself with is so important. And that's just benefited me so much in my life that I think about it all the time. So I think when it comes to investing, entrepreneurship, anything at all, definitely it's, make sure you're doing your own research, your own homework, but also it's like trying to find valuable information, not just any information, and having people around you on the table help you do that, much easier than doing it on your own.
Amazing. And for someone that wants to get started with investing, right, maybe they've been hearing about it, because when you think about building wealth, there's a couple of things that would really help you to build wealth, right? Yeah. You could have a high paying job. Yeah. And if you save a lot of money from that job, that could be a great foundation. You could start a business and, with businesses, sometimes you can have limitless opportunities in terms of revenue, right? Yeah. Which can make you wealthy, right? And there's also real estate, right? Which can be a source of wealth. And then there's also investing, right? So investing becomes really important when it comes to being able to build wealth. So if someone is interested in building wealth and they want to start by investing, how can they get started?
Yeah, I think to me, how I get started in my personal journey is it's always great to invest in yourself first. So what I mean by that is get started investing. Get started investing in yourself and building skills and building things that can increase your income. So I think you laid out a lot of different ways you can invest. You can get a high paying job, you can invest in different assets, etc. But to me, the best investment is investment in yourself. But what I mean by that is how can you increase your education, increase your skills so you can go out there and generate more income for yourself. I think many times think about investing, it's like, okay, let me put X amount of money, but if I don't have much money to invest, right, then I don't have that outcome isn't as large for me, right? So if I can first focus on, let me increase what I'm bringing in before I increase what I'm growing, that to me is the very first step. And I think a lot of people, and how do you do that, right? I think a lot of ways to do that, you're trying to build new skills. So what are ways you can go and grow your skills that you have today, right? What are ways you can go and expand your revenue streams, right? Are there other ways you can make income? Is it from a job? It's from a side business? Like what is it from, right? And then when you can have that nice income level that you can grow, then you start growing it. But if you don't have that income flow coming in, it's really hard to invest. Because I don't think, for me personally, I wouldn't invest as a means to generate income per se. It's a means to grow it. So I think it's important for you to look at how can I first invest in myself, build skills, learn to increase my income, and then use that income to then start investing. And I think a lot of, and that's actually one thing at Meritcy we talk about a lot too, is for students, it's we understand the value of jobs that can transform, you socially, economically, intellectually. And when you can go and really invest in learning skills that can get you those better paying jobs, then you can have the opportunity to then invest in yourself and invest in assets, et cetera.
Yeah, man, amazing. Because I think this is something that I do talk about is, especially if you're getting started. One thing I think about is if you're just getting started on your financial journey, and so you get a job, right? And you go into the job, say, at $60,000 a year. Yeah. Think of how long it's going to take you to get up there.
Yeah.
You're going in to a job, getting paid $60,000, and inflation is at an all-time high. Stuff is going up. Of course, you're going to get a raise every year,
right?
But it's going to be so gradual. Yeah. Whereas if you were able to your point, build a skill, right, and be able to command a higher salary, and you go in at, let's say, 95, 100,000, or at a great salary, you set yourself up for success, right? Yep. Because at that point, when you're getting these raises, when you're getting these bonuses, it just sets you up to be able to build wealth quicker. And
absolutely,
one thing that we're talking about on GWP podcast today is we don't want to wait till 69 to cash out that retirement. We want to build wealth fast and smart, right? And in doing that, number one, we're not going to lose that principle, right? So we're going to build our skill to make sure we're critical thinkers in our investment decisions that we make. The fact that you're making a high salary job doesn't mean when you pull out $1,000, you shouldn't think about it, because it takes a long time to stack up that money. So when you're pulling that money out, you should be able to think about that. But it's really important to build that skill in order to be able to command that high salary, and you set yourself up for like really good success.
Absolutely. And I think that's point is very, very true, which is the point of like, you should always be looking to set yourself up for success in the future. It's almost that thing I hear a lot is like, your future self will thank you. Like when you're doing something, you want your future self to thank you. And I think you mentioned about jobs, right? And getting income. It's like, I think when you're in college or when you're in school, or like maybe you're not in school, but being intentional about how can I maximize, right, my first opportunity. And now, of course, the job should never all be about money. It should be about you're enjoying what you're doing and you love the work. And then if that checks out, okay, now how can I in that space, how can I maximize what I'm earning for doing that work? And that just, it transforms your life so many different ways. The earlier you can save, right? We all know money compounds, right? And if you're doing it the right way, it'll compound. So I think, your point is very true on earning more, to save more, to invest more. I think that should be the mindset.
Amazing. And are there any, I guess, like latest trends, right? Or any latest technologies that young adults that are just starting to build wealth should know about, especially with your experience with, starting that student run investment fund?
Yeah. It's a great question. If you look at the world today, the investing landscape today, there's so many really amazing emerging technologies that are out there. And you have things like blockchain technology, things like artificial intelligence. You have a lot of things like machine learning, robotics. There's so many really great technologies out there. I think the way I look at it, especially as an entrepreneur, is how do you leverage these things for your own business to be more efficient and effective? I see it as a way of like, if I'm looking to build something, how can I leverage how can I leverage AI, right, to move faster? How can I use it to solve problems quicker? And I think what that does is it'll help me increase my income, and then I can reinvest, right, in, some of those things. So for me, it's like I encourage people to spend a lot of time reading. I think listening to podcasts like this one, it's a great podcast, and then listening to videos, subscribing to newsletters, to news publications, just staying up to date on what's happening. I think is really important. Whether you work for someone else, you work for yourself, it doesn't matter. Just understanding those things is really important. And I think we're seeing so many trends happening. We're seeing a lot of things in the future of work, a lot of things in the education space. Online learning is changing a lot. People are, less people are in college, they can build skills, other ways. So I think we're just seeing so many trends happening that if you're really listening and you're reading and you're watching, you would know that there's so much opportunity out there for you. You have to go out there and get it. And I think one that people are really excited about, obviously, is AI and how that would transform a lot of things for business, for entrepreneurs, for investing. And I'm excited about it too. And I'm excited to see where that's going to land. But there's a lot more things just beyond that scope. So a lot of that still has to play out. But I think if you're an entrepreneur right now or a student, it's definitely worth tuning into those things and seeing how they can impact your own journey.
Yeah, amazing. And another thing that I want to talk about is Meritcy.
Yeah.
Right. So, you started this amazing company doing a lot of transformative work.
Yeah.
What is the future of Meritcy?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the way that we look at it, as mentioned, is we really focus on this idea of a social enterprise. So how can we solve problems with a business and help people and leave people with a positive impact? And the way that we're viewing that right now is you're looking at that in the career space. And we're looking at there are so many talented students across a ton of different universities, and all they're missing is knowledge, access, mentorship. And how can we bridge that gap where a student is today and the outcome they want in the future? And that's where Merticy sits. It's where that bridge to that outcome. And how can we be the bridge to that outcome? And I think for us, a lot of what we focus on is on the education side. So we want to really help students understand the wealth of opportunities that are out there for them with their careers. For example, we have investment banking cohorts, management consulting cohorts. We have live events, speakers, et cetera. Like we have a lot of things that are really built for students and built for them to really understand what the space is like. So I remember being a student and all these career paths like private equity, investment banking, venture capital, management consulting, tech were very foreign to me. And it's not things that you just like learn in school like that, right? And a lot of times the process starts really early in your college career. And so there's a place where you can go and learn that and learn it with others in a network that's, global. We have students that are in it from a lot of universities across the whole entire world. That to me is something that hopefully can leave a really positive impact on students. So talk about where the future of Meritcy and kind of where we're looking to go. For us, it's all about how many can we impact. So we're really big on the number of students that we can impact, the number of problems we can solve for them. So right now we're really hyper focused on certain career paths, but a job for us is how can we expand that, right? And go to multiple career paths. And then, how can we expand that too and change how we're offering our learning? So students that can learn in many different ways can learn from us. And how can we also be able to scale, right, that live, close one-on-one attention, right? How can we do that at scale? How can we scale on-demand content, build interactive content? So for us, it's looking at number of students that we can impact, how we're delivering our content to improve it and make it better for students, and looking at how we measure our success isn't necessarily, how many students get X offers or, how much, whatever happens, how much money they're making now. It's how many people that we impact. Do they come in Meritcy one way and leave much better from what we taught them? And our secret sauce, where we really are really good at, is networking piece. It's like, that's what we teach and talk about, and what we are really confident in, we can help students with the most is networking. So someone can come in with one skill set and leave with, coming in having a super strong world-class networking skill set. That to us is a success, because that will help them throughout their entire career journey or life, no matter what company they're at, what job they have. So for us, it's all about impact, how many people we can reach, the content we're delivering, and continue to improve for students. So I'm excited about it, and I love Meritcy. It's a passion project for me, something that we hope to have and, continue to run and to help as many students as we can.
Yeah. So when I was reading about Meritcy, right, I saw a lot of reviews from students, right? Yeah. And these reviews, I'm like, man, this is like amazing, right? Like some of the results that they're getting from what you're doing with Meritcy. Yeah. I know when I was in college, my college journey really started at not Union County College, actually. My college journey started at New Jersey City University, and I went there for about 2 years, and I should have probably never gone to New Jersey City University, and not because New Jersey City University is not a great school, but I didn't have great mentorship while I was in high school, and then I ended up there. So I always felt like I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was just there, right? And eventually I realized, okay, what's the point if I keep going and I don't know what I want to do? So I just took a year off, and I actually just went to work. And as I was working, I got into management, managing people, understanding the business. And I was like, man, this is cool. Yeah. I need to understand how much we're selling, why we're selling it, and where is it in the store that's causing it to sell so much. So I started to connect these business mechanisms, and I had to tell these stories to people why it's selling. The manager comes in and she's like, hey, we sold 25 of this. Like, why is that? Last week we sold only 10 of them. And I'm like, well, it was in the back of the store and I brought it to the front, and that's why it's selling. And I'm like, this is fun. Yeah. I was like, you know what, maybe I should go to school and learn more about this, because this is just me using my common sense. What if I can actually build this up and make it something stronger? So then I went to Union County College, which amazing, because there I started studying business, but it was just business fundamentals, business law. I was like, man, this is fun, because I would go to work and I'll try to apply everything that I learned in class, right? Whether it's the way I interact with people, whether it's human resources, understanding how human resources comes together to actually get the business to get to the goals that they get to. Now, I say all this to come to Meritcy, because when I see all of these recommendations, you talk about impact, right? There's a process that you follow. There's something that you're doing to get these students to go out there and write these amazing reviews. There's something is going on there in Meritcy. So for me, when I was getting started with my college journey, I didn't experience some of these things, and I wish I did, right? Because I may have ended up somewhere else. And not to say I don't love where I'm at right now. Right. Everything that I went through has got me to where I am right now. Yeah. But someone could really benefit from that right now, because they might be at a stage where if Meritcy came in and, touched their life or touched their career now, it could literally change their trajectory, right? So talk about that. How can, for someone that's listening right now, maybe they're still in college, right? What can Meritcy do for them?
Yeah, it's great to hear you say that as well, right? I think for us, it's like, that's why we do it. I mean, those reviews you're reading, like that's the purpose of doing this. And if you ask me, I would write that review for 50 people that have helped me impact my life. So I think that's the view that we take on it. And that's why we love, doing this. And that's why it's fun for us to do this as well. And I think when you talk about students right now, and if they're in the career process, they're in college, they're like looking to get involved. I think, one thing that I always encourage people to do before they start any journey is like determine like, what do you want to do for yourself? What are your personal goals? So, and I love the story that you just gave about yourself. And it's like taking the time to reflect. It's like, and this is one thing that we do a lot is we try to understand like, okay, what are you trying to accomplish? And sometimes it's, I don't know what I don't know. And I would just love for you to help me and teach me about these different opportunities and teach me where to go. For some students, it's, I have an idea and I want this to be my guide and help guide me through the process. And then for other students, it's like, I know exactly what it is, but I'm just looking at you to get that extra edge, extra support. So no matter what type of student it is, right, we like to spend time actually getting to understand, right, what that is and understand like, okay, what is this student trying to do? What are their goals? That way we can better support them in their journey. And for us, again, we love when we see the great outcomes. I mean, that makes us happy. People are working at these great companies and they definitely have through Meritcy. However, again, that to us, isn't even the part that we're most excited about. That isn't truly the part that we want to tell people about. It's a part of the impact, right? It's the skills, it's the building, it's the learning, it's the career education part of it. No matter where you're at in your career journey, one thing we want to offer you is just the education piece, and where you'll take that and what you'll do with that, will be up to you. And a lot of the students that you see are extremely hard workers. Worth them all. I'm, extremely proud of all of the work that they've done. But the people who had that within them just needed that knowledge and access. Like you mentioned, just needed someone to help them, pay it forward to them, and give them that knowledge. And then they're going to take it, miles ahead of what we could ever thought. And so those are the type of students that we love to help and work with is students that, just need that knowledge, that access, that mentorship. And then they'll be, well on their way to, whatever outcome they want for themselves. And even if it isn't today, it'll be tomorrow, right? And they'll find a way to get there. And that's where when we love being in that position. I mean, we just see people succeed, see them grow. I mean, for us, it's like helping ambitious people reach their potential. And with Meritcy, we have a chance to do that and do it at a high level. And I'm just really excited for students watching today, help them do that and help be a part of that journey. As that's what, helps us get up every day and, build this company.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. Could you tell us maybe one story of, I know you have many stories because I saw so many reviews from a lot of students, but tell us one story, or maybe if you want to share more stories of maybe some few students you've helped and what was the journey like?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one student that we helped and worked with directly for a long time, actually, a few years. So I'd done, so Meritcy's been around for a few months now, 6-ish months. So we've put it into this kind of company institutionalized process. We've been doing a lot of work with students for a long time. And I think, one thing we do with students is about a few years ago, there was a student who had a very similar background to me. First generation American and college student, background, it's necessarily was low income, didn't have the knowledge. But what they did have is the drive and the want to. It's funny because I actually met them through a first generation program at my college. And it's funny because I remember I was working with as a peer mentor with 6 different students. And I was like, hey, I'm starting this fund. And if you want to be a part of it, just let me know. I would love to have you all join. And no one got back to me for a month, except for this one kid who's like, you know what? I want to join, right? I'm interested in this. I'm interested in finance. Knew nothing about it though. I had no idea what it was. I was like, all right, this kid raised his hand. No one else did. So, and again, I was this crazy kid trying to start something that people hadn't heard before. And he was like, yeah, I want to join this journey with you. And then we got a lot closer from there and we started working together. He was like, I've seen you done X, Y, and Z jobs. I want to do that too. Can you help me out? And here's why I love this story about him, because it's someone who was always going to be successful. Just me working with him and talking to him was just help them do it faster, help to accelerate his journey. And then now what I love seeing is at that same university, he's doing the same thing for other students at the same time. So it's almost that flywheel of you're able to help people, but the impact is so much larger than you can imagine, because they're then going to help even more people and impact more people. All right. And then they're going to be able to do that at scale. And for him and helping him with his career get to where he is today, Goldman Sachs, investment banking, right? That to me is something I'm really excited about. But more so than that, it's how many other students he can impact, right, on his journey. And that's the beautiful thing about that. And that's what actually helped spark Meritcy. And the students in Meritcy now, we have stories of students who, were in community college, now in a 4-year university, looking for support. We have students who started college at 29 who need support and help from us. We have students, actually someone who's extremely young, like, high school senior who wants to get involved. Like, I'm a go-getter, ready to go now. So we have so many students, so many different backgrounds, so many stories. But the best part is like helping them, and then they help other people, and it's just flywheel. So eventually one day, right, the career knowledge gap for every student is going to be so small that it's really going to be up to you. And that's what we want, the ball in your court. We don't want anything else to be, limiting you, your knowledge, your access. The ball's in your court, and now you have the chance to achieve what you want to achieve. There's nothing in your way. And that's our job, is to put the ball in your court. When the ball's in your court, we just watch you do all the amazing things that you're going to do. We watch you score and, put up a lot of points and do amazing things. And then we can sit back and be like, wow, like, we were excited to be a part of that journey with you.
Amazing. And I love that story so much.
Yeah.
Because one thing you talk about is how so many people have helped you along the way. And all these people ask of you is to pay it forward.
That's it.
And I love to see that you're doing that, literally paying it forward every single day.
I think I was literally told that verbatim. It's like, the only thing I ask for you is just pay it forward, right? And before even Meritcy or any business I started, it was always just having conversations with people, right? I've talked to hundreds of students before even thinking of starting any business from it, and then seeing the benefit of that. And it's like, okay, how do you provide that at scale now? Like, how do you do this you've helped X amount of students. How do you help Y? How do you 10X that, 100X that, right? And do it at scale. And that's where you talk about Meritcy. That's where you talk about, things that we have, our memberships, being a member of what we're trying to build, having a lot of different offerings for students. So that's where you start to build that out, and now you can do it at scale and help any student anywhere globally, which is cool to see, student anywhere, right, with their career journey. So I think you're right. It's getting the knowledge and it's paying it forward. Whether it's your career, entrepreneurship, life in general, life tips, life skills, having mentors, having great people, which I've had as an amazing support system, and then just paying it forward to other people, then you create this flywheel. And if everyone keeps doing that, you just help the next generation over and over and over again, and then everyone can maximize their potential.
I love that. Yeah. Always pay it forward, man. And one thing that I wanted to ask you about also is, because GWP podcast, I think we do have global listeners.
Yeah.
There are listeners all across the world. And so if I'm maybe based in London, could I benefit from Meritcy?
Yeah, we actually have a student that's from London. That's funny you mentioned that example. So we help students from around the world. And it's great to see that. We've had students from London. We've had students from other parts of Europe. We've had students from India, for example. We've had students from Asia. We have students from everywhere we've worked with so far. And we're in the extremely early days of this too. We're just getting this started and kind of kicked off. But for us, it's like the things that we walk through, our education program, the way we build it, our skills that no matter, honestly, what career path you're going down, where you are, what kind of companies you're talking to, you can hopefully benefit from this. Now, we definitely get tailored into certain career paths and it gets more technical, but a lot of the content, can be helpful no matter what career path or what school or what geography that you're coming from. And that to us is something that we spend a lot of time working on. We continue to work on. One cool thing about Meritcy is that we call it a dynamic membership, meaning that like all the things we have now gets better every single month, every single year. We're always adding more and adding more and adding more. And we actually put ourselves to that test, like add something new every month. But everything else stays the same. You just add something new every month. Now it's an added benefit to the person. So the longer you stay, the better it gets. And that's kind of our mindset for us. And that's how we build it. And hopefully they can benefit people from across the world and across the country and across the globe. And that's how we built it. And that's how it's making that impact.
Man, this has been such an amazing conversation.
Yeah.
I've enjoyed it so much.
Absolutely.
And finally, is there anything that maybe you wanted to talk about today that I haven't covered yet?
No, we covered a lot. I think it's great. I think we covered, talked about entrepreneurship, talked about investing. We talked a lot about networking and mindset. I think just one last piece I'll add to this is I think a lot of this stuff, whether you're telling your story, whether you're building a company, whether you're investing, whether you're working at a startup, it all comes with, two really core things that guide me is confidence and a support system. And confidence in yourself, confidence in your abilities, showing up as yourself, showing up as your full self, I think is a really important piece that a lot of times we talk to students that they're missing, and they're learning, okay, how do I show up and be more confident? And it's really knowing and understanding that you have so much value to add, and you have so much uniqueness about yourself. And it's almost really, it's just the hard part is like, how do you express that? It isn't that it's not there, it's how do you express it? And I just, really always talk about the power of confidence. Not overconfidence, not arrogance, but confidence in yourself and your abilities. Because people like confident people. Like people who are confident what they're doing, confident in themselves. And you'd be surprised how far confidence will take you. And then the last piece is the support system. I mean, if there's a theme for today, that's the theme. I mean, it's surrounding yourself with your people. And the thing is, like, if you can't find that out, if for whatever reason you can't find that system, you don't have it, it's building environments like that for yourself. You mentioned the fund, right? We didn't have that, so we built it, right? Create it. Bring people around you, right? Be the one, be the catalyst for that. If you don't have the systems around you, create them. Or go find them in other places. So I think for me, it's find that support system, be confident in yourself, network consistently, and you'll be amazed at the things you can achieve. As I'm truly believe that everybody has something uniquely about themselves that's extremely valuable. It's just how do you express it? Some do better than others, so some succeed more than others. But if everyone just knew how to express that, how to tell that story, we have a lot more success stories, and that's what we're about at Meritcy too. So I'm excited for us to help more people find that.
Man, I consider myself a very inspirational, motivating person.
Yeah.
But man, I'm talking to you and I'm like, I feel like starting 5 companies right now.
No, man. You asked great questions, honestly. You definitely set me up. So this was a great opportunity. I appreciate it, man.
I love it. So if any of my listeners are wondering, hey, Darius, I love Darius. I love everything he's talked about. I want to continue this conversation with him. How can they find you?
Yeah. Big on LinkedIn. Spend a lot of time there. So LinkedIn is a great place to find me there. But also reach out. I love talking to students. You can find me team at Merticy.com. So reach out to me. Questions, concerns. I will find time to talk to people. I do it a lot. Obviously, I work, I have a job, right? But at the same time, I make time to do this as well. So reach out to me. LinkedIn, that's a great place to start.
Yeah. You hit it right on the head. You said you make time.
Yeah.
There's never time. You would never have time, but you make that time.
Make time for it. Yeah.
So I really love that. Yeah. So finally, there's one question we like to ask every single one of our guests, which is, what is your definition of wealth?
Definition of wealth. It's a great question. My definition of wealth comes in wealth financially, spiritually, socially, and it's getting to the point of peace in your current situation, to where all the things in your life are at a point where you're at peace with them, right? So from an economic standpoint, you're at peace with where you're at financially, right? It doesn't, wealth to me doesn't mean you have to be rich and have X amount of dollars. It just means that from yourself, that you're consistently compounding and you've built this up for yourself and you're at peace with where you're at. You're not stressing about money. You're not stressing about finances, right? You're in a state of wealth for yourself, in abundance of yourself, right? And then also, I think for family and socially and spiritually, the sense of having wealth there too, right? I think for me, that's how I define wealth. It's if you can be at peace in all those areas and have an abundance in those areas and consistent. And last piece I'll say on wealth too is if you can hopefully pass it down to someone else, right? Kids, family, friends, whoever that is to you. But something that you've built that you can give back, give down, pass down. And someone else can take and then continue to build on top of. And you continue that cycle of at peace, build on top of it, more at peace. And then, everyone just keeps building on top of that wealth. And now you have something, generational wealth. You're building that. So to me, that's how I define wealth. That's my idea of wealth. And that's what I go after when I think about wealth and building wealth. And that helps drive my, idea of wealth every single day, pretty much.
Yeah, man, this has been such a great conversation, man. Thank you so much for doing this.
Of course. Thank you for having me, man. I appreciate it. It was great.
Yeah. Thank you for taking the time, man. I really enjoyed this conversation. I can't wait to just listen back to this.
Yeah. I'm excited for it too, man. Thanks so much. And shout out to the listeners and you guys for tuning in too. And it's a great podcast, man. Keep going. It's great. And I appreciate it. Cool.
Yeah, man. Thank you. Cool. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Hey there. Well done for listening up to this point. We'll catch you on the next episode. Peace.